Cool. It's that time of the week again. Everything's decided to blow up on me today. Chrome's died, software's died. However, I'm finally here today, and I'm joined by Maff. How you doing, Maff?
Hello. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. Yeah, very good, thanks. Yeah.
Cool.
As always, we kind of do some very informal or basic introductions. How did you get involved with Umbraco, Maff?
I've been in IT for about 15 years.
Okay.
Started off doing web development, and then moved into more operational management kind of roles, and went really far down that side until about 5 years of development again, by trying to build my own product and try to build my own business that way.
Yep.
Left my cushy management job and went all in. And haven't looked back since. Been over the last 3 years, I've been working with Umbraco with various agencies. I've been freelance for the past almost about a year now.
Okay, nice. So sounds like maybe a couple, 2-3 years Umbraco work.
Years in total, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. So this is obviously something you demoed or talked about at the Umbraco Bristol meetup that we're going to see today.
Yeah.
So it's a client kind of case study site that you've recently done.
So I mean, the site is it's called Nessie Learning, Nessie.com, and it's an online learning platform for dyslexic children. It's set up by a guy in Bristol, a guy called Mike Jones, and the background of it is he's got dyslexia, and when he was at school, all the teachers said he was blah blah, couldn't learn, you don't need to come to school anymore. So Mum homeschooled him, and through that process of homeschooling him and realizing he had dyslexia and coming up with learning techniques to help him read and write and as numbers. His mum actually set up at the Bristol school, which is a really big thing in Bristol, and Mike taught there for a few years.
Okay.
So from that, he originally released a set of CD-ROMs, like you remember.
CD-ROMs.
That was about 10 years ago or something, 10, 12 years ago. So that was his first kind of product. He leaks into those CD-ROMs, which then went on to eventually become a Flash-based website. So the website that's up there at the minute is all Flash-based, but me put in February to turn all this Flash-based website into. So we're not actually doing the HTML5 games and all that kind of stuff. We're doing all the back-end API, so all the data crunching and config and that kind of thing. And originally it wasn't anything to do with an Umbraco project at all. It was just come in, build an API, serve all this data to the HTML5 games, and collect data coming back from the games when people are playing the games, so you can check on progress and achievements and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Quite quickly, within a few days, we realized that we needed some form of administration platform to manage all this configuration data.
Yep.
If you think I'll show you I don't know if you want to see a big load of XML, but there's one of the configuration.
Yeah, no, let's start looking through some stuff whilst we chat.
Okay, so let me just share my screen. So one of the configuration files that we've got in there is about 100. Whoa, that was a bit inception. It's about 130,000 lines of XML. So let me just hang on. Let me just.
2 seconds. It's just trying to play catch up.
Can you see that?
Yeah, there we go. Okay. So yeah, a massive XML dump. So this is XML of their games or lessons, so to speak.
Yeah. So this is so there's a number of applications. So this is a reading application. So this is essentially the entire XML configuration for that one application.
Okay.
So there's 130,000 lines of XML. So if you imagine trying to manage it manually and build this manually, and then go back in because you made a spelling mistake or wrong URL or something.
Yep.
it's just not going to happen. So very quickly we realized that we needed some kind of administration back end to it, and Umbraco sprang to mind. And literally within a couple of hours, I'd set up a kind of a mock. This is how it would look in the back end. So creating various document types and the structure, which the structure of the Umbraco setup mimics the structure of the XML essentially. So what we have, if I split to different languages, which was a big plus point for using Umbraco, because we wanted to be able to take the content language, translate the whole content into a different language. Between UK and US, you're looking at spelling differences. You're looking at when they have audio files or video files, then they use a US narrator as opposed to an English narrator, and within the language, that means they need to have a separate instance for it. Within one language, we've got this application. So this is the application that we just saw the XML for reading spec application. Each application has got islands, and then within those islands, you've got a number of games or videos or worksheets and that kind of stuff. So this is the current website. I'm not sure how well this would display.
I think we're currently lagging behind. I don't know if your connection's being a bit flaky at your end. We're still just seeing the content tree. Oh no, I think we're catching up. I think I'm now seeing Azure Webjobs.
Yeah, I just took this off to the other side to log back in.
Okay, so I can see the site. So there's some monkey and some islands, and yeah.
So this is the whole platform's really cool, because it's all geared toward kids. So you've got monkeys and gorillas and all these cool sort of animations. And each one of these islands has a set of games and activities and worksheets and that kind of thing. So this current Flash version, but we're about to relaunch this with the HTML5 version. So you can play some games, you can watch some videos. I won't play any. You can watch videos when it lets me. Why won't it let me watch videos? Okay, you can see the things that you've achieved on there. So it tracks progress. You've got a set of videos. You've got a set of different techniques to teach people about words and all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
You've got a worksheet, PDF worksheets that you can download and work through offline. All of this needs configuration data behind it. So this is all what we've built in Umbraco. So again, if we go back to Umbraco, you can see for each island.
So island 1, island 2. Okay, so those were the islands that we was kind of seeing, and then the lessons.
You have videos, you have games. So these are games.
So this kind of tree is representing that massive XML structure, technically?
Yeah, exactly. It's a really simple way for the guys at Nessie to come in and manage that huge, massive data.
Yeah.
And so the HTML5 games have been built to take in this and say, oh, okay, so for this island, we now need this game, this video, this MP3 file or whatever, and then just grab those assets and display them within the HTML5 games.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it works really well. I mean, initially put a load of data into this himself, and then he just hired like 3 school leavers to come in for a week, and he gave them all a set of documents and pointed them at Azure and said, now create all this structure and create this data. And it's so intuitive that they just went ahead and did that and without any problems.
That's awesome.
It's really good. So what happens behind the scenes is that we've got the API that serves out all this XML configuration data. Behind the scenes, we're intercepting the Umbraco events and then saving all that data into a separate database. So we're not serving API data directly from Umbraco. Maybe if that REST API stuff had come a little bit earlier, that's in 7.3, then we might have gone down that route. But because of the complexity of the API and the data that's coming back as well, we decided to split it out.
Okay, so in terms of what, because of kids kind of tracking what they've done and haven't done, it's kind of separated into its own database? Is it for that main kind of reasons? Like you said, you're pushing a lot of data back and forth by the seems of it.
Yeah, mainly. So yeah, we're collecting a lot of transactional data back from the games. And it made sense to keep those two databases separate and just push data from Umbraco into the separate database.
So is this done on a kind of a save and publish event? So if you was, for example, this Banana Wheels one that we're looking at, if you was to do a save and publish, made some change, this is then pushing it with an event handler over to your kind of other database, or is it done on a schedule, or is it done in any other way?
Yeah, so it's done using Incept of the events. So can you see the production?
Yep.
Cool. So we're incepting the trashing event. It's when we save a data type, some of the data types we need in the database as well, such as language, because each application has got a foreign key relation to the language, so we need to save that into the database. We're incepting the published event, so anytime you publish any content, it grabs that and does something with it. Deleted, so when you empty the recycle bin, then it will do something with it as well. And then finally, when we upload media, we're incepting that, because when we have for the worksheets, like I said, there's lots of worksheets. There's about 1,000 PDF worksheets that you can download and work through offline. For each one of those worksheets, we need a thumbnail image to display on the site as well. So really, to bulk upload 1,000 PDFs is fine through the media manager, but then to associate 1,000 thumbnail images with those would just be a real pain. So what we wanted to do, this brings us into the Azure bit. So what I did was create a web job, an Azure web job, to go through every time a PDF file is uploaded, a web job is triggered to generate the thumbnail for the PDF file and save that data back to the database.
Okay.
So I'll show that in a little bit as well.
Yeah, I'll let you just carry on.
So they're the inceptions that we do. And then for the publish, if we look at this publish incept, it's this one, and this switch statement, which at the time I couldn't really think of any other way to do it, because we've got all these different document types, and each document type represents a different entity in our database. So you have an application, which is, that's saved in one table. You have an island, which is saved in another table, and all of the relationships and different type of entity it is. So when we're incepting the publish one of these various methods to take the data into one of our entities and then save it into our database.
Okay. Yep.
If we look at this save application method, all very similar in that we go in there, we get any dependencies that we need for our entity. So this is a language. So the application needs a language associated with it. So we get the language and then basically create our entity. So in here, all we're saying is the database. So we're using Entity Framework for all this data manipulation, sorry, data saving. And create a new one, and then create it in the database. So essentially that's what content type or document type within our Umbraco application. Just each one is ever so slightly different. So we need to make sure that all the properties are different, and we need to do different things to manipulate the data to get it into our database.
Okay. That makes sense. So yeah, you just depending, obviously, like you say, on the doc type, how it needs to be in your kind of other database, you're just doing different kind of manipulations before it ends up in that database.
Yeah, absolutely. So in a sense, I mean, that's all pretty, pretty standard stuff, and it's quite straightforward. There are a few little difficulties, well, due to the data structure. So, for example, a lot of these games depend on words and letters.
Yeah.
So rather than creating, what we didn't want to do is, well, what we were trying to do was make it as simple as possible for content editors to build this structure, because it's such a big structure, and we wanted to ambiguities from the structures as possible. So if I just show you that, again, so this is a game this is called Banana Wheels. So it's one type of game where you can only do certain things within it. So for Banana Wheels, hang on, there we go. You can only create a Banana Wheels level underneath that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then Banana Wheels level, you can only create a certain under that you can create, and then so a letter just has a letter, funnily enough, and the audio or the letter.
Yep.
What we didn't want to do is in Umbraco, we didn't want to have a folder with all the letters of the alphabet, and then you have to go in and pick that letter out and do all this kind of stuff and make it. We wanted to try and make it as quick and as simple as possible. But behind the scenes, we have to just have one version of F, one version of A, one version of N. So we have a table in the database for letters, we have a table in the database for words, and they're all...
Okay, so you're just making sure that you've got a distinct version in your remote database or the second database.
Yeah, exactly. Because we need to be able to, especially for the words, they need to be able to monitor progress to make sure that they've learned, how many words have you learned and which words are you stuck on. And there's various reasons for those given, depending on the different type of dyslexia that they're suffering from.
Yep.
So we needed to only have one source of words. So that just means a little bit more kind of fiddling in the back end to save it, but it means that we've got a much simpler front end that people can use. Yeah,
no, awesome.
So, I mean, that's essentially the Umbraco setup. We're using it's straight out of the box Umbraco. We're using Dirk's Umbraco blob storage provider. So all the media that we're entering into the Umbraco platform is being stored on Azure Storage.
Yep.
Because one of the requisites for the project was to be able to use CDN to deliver the content.
Right. Okay.
So there's a big amount of video and audio content in this application, and we're currently serving it across the US and UK. So we wanted to be able to use some kind of CDN. So Azure CDN just plugs directly into Azure Storage. So using Dirk's plugin, everything is saved in Azure Storage, which just works really, really well and makes it really easy also to deploy between environments, because you're not having to worry about media and dev, and then you put it up live and you're doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think he wasn't using CDN to deliver the media. I use that blob storage for Umbraco. If I'm doing any Umbraco developments that you Azure hosted on Azure, use that Umbraco storage. So I have the Azure Storage plugin just to save headaches from that.
Yeah, no, I know that we've used it internally for a couple of projects that we've done with an Azure, and where requirements for media and CDN, it's a great little utility that you just install. I think you modify one config file, is that right, Maff, off the top of my head? That just to say that anything that this file system provider or something like that is to use the Azure media blob or something.
Yeah, it's the file system providers. So so you just put your connection string in there. That I probably shouldn't have shown you.
Yeah, it's lagging behind, so don't worry. I haven't seen it.
Sure. You could only see a bit of it anyway. There's another like 50 characters to try and decode. So it's in there, and that's it. That the installation is actually really simple. All all the data types that we're using, we're basically using either drop downs or multi-node tree pickers.
So there's nothing in terms of complex data entry in terms of, like you say, it's either drop downs or text entry, or media pickers or uploads by the seams of it in terms of the files.
Yeah, exactly. Because we wanted to, starting to think about using archetype, that kind of thing too, because each of these games is slightly different. So I wanted to just try and make it dynamic, but then actually making it dynamic for the content editors, reduce that level of ambiguity as to the actual definite structure of the data. We needed to make the data input as prescriptive as possible, so we could control the data structure, because on the other end of the line, the games are going to break if they've got the data in the wrong structure.
Yeah.
So it was just, don't use anything Flash, just make it all, it's all text boxes, number fields, and that kind of thing. So
yeah, okay.
Nothing spectacular in it whatsoever. And through this entire project, I've made one web page. It's all been back end stuff. So it's been quite a different Umbraco project for me, and it's quite an interesting one to use, because I haven't even, like I say, I've done one template. And that template. So if you think about for each language, there's about 15,000 data items, 15,000 content items in the Umbraco setup, which means if you think each one of those has got, say, 4 properties, you've got 60,000 pieces of data.
Yeah.
It's a lot of data, and to republish the entire currently takes about 9 hours.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So you just got a ridiculous amount of data to publish, and publishing that through the back end into timing out and all this kind of stuff. Even if you put the time out for long enough, it's and leave it running over in the morning, and it's timed out, and you don't know whether for sure if you've published everything or not. So I created this web page just so we could publish it. Could log in and publish it without having to go through the back end. So this is just using the Umbraco API controllers and a bit of Angular on this page when it finally loads up, to go and get all the content within the system, and then one by one just send a publish request back to so it just gets a piece of content from the database and publishes it, and then sends a response back. And this you can just kick it off. It will take like 9-10 hours to go through and republish the whole thing. So
is that something that you would need to leave open, or could, in theory, I browse away from this and it's doing this off in a kind of a background process or thread, or is this just requires this page to be open for the requests to go back and forth?
Yeah, because it's the requests are managed using the Angular on the page.
Right.
So the initial request back to the server just gets a list of node IDs, and then Angular just loops through those one at a time. And
just is pinging them just to say, publish this one, this one, this one, this one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I just wanted to do something quick. Go. So each time something's published, it will display, this has been published, this has been published.
Yeah.
If there's an error like this, there was this error. It doesn't give much detail about the error, but it just says, there was an error publishing this one, and then we'd look in a log file somewhere so we can go back in and see what happened with that.
Yeah.
So that's the way built in the past 4 months on this project. So.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, no, very, very handy. So where does kind of Azure tie into all of this then? Obviously you talked about the blob storage in terms of CDN, and obviously you briefly touched on Webjobs. Is that mainly the main requirement just because of Azure and the CDN, or is it using other tools like Webjobs and other things that is powering this kind of system or platform?
Sure. So the main thing, this is the presentation that I did at the Bristol meetup. So we've got this
Might have to just give us a moment or two whilst we play catch up.
We're supposed to be getting fibre in this building.
No worries, dude.
Yeah.
Sit closer to the Wi-Fi or something.
Yeah. Can you see that?
Yep. Okay. Now, yeah, there we go. 20 to 30 second lag. There we go. So we've got a nice flow diagram. Care to run us through it?
Everything points to everything else. So
yep.
You've got the Umbraco. So everything's hosted on Azure. We're using Azure Storage. We're using SQL Azure. Bit of an Azure fanboy, really. I think I've used it in previous projects, and the guy that I'm working with, we've worked on previous projects together, and Azure, so we know enough about it to just throw up an instance and get something up and running. Yep. The guys at Nessie that were building this for wanted to move away from their current hosting providers, and they wanted something that was a bit more in their control to manage. So Azure is an obvious something to go for. So we've got the media storage. So we're using Azure Blob Storage for all our media, using that plugin that I just mentioned from Dirk.
Yep.
We've got 2 separate databases, our standalone Umbraco database, and then this Nessie database that's both running on SQL Azure. Our API is another Azure cloud service. And then the website that actually hosts the games at the bottom there is also another Azure cloud service. Okay.
So when you say Azure Cloud Service, you're talking more of like a website instance as opposed to kind of like you spun up a VM and the VM's got IIS and you've got, I don't know, SQL installed on that. You're kind of using the native Azure kind of features, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. So the cloud service, in Azure, you can have a virtual machine, or you can have a cloud service, or you can have what they've now called web apps, but used to be called websites.
Yeah.
So to me, I mean, you can throw up a website really simply, and they're really useful for demoing things. But when you start to have to scale that website up, to me, it doesn't actually make sense to use websites, because the cost of them is pretty much the same as using a cloud service. Sometimes a cloud service is actually cheaper, and you can do more customization on the cloud service. So cloud service is essentially it's one layer of abstraction up from a virtual machine. You don't have to worry about the operating system at all.
Okay.
You can still remote desktop onto it. You can still kind of go on there and troubleshoot and see what's going on. But each time you deploy your cloud service, it just throws up a new virtual machine and sticks your code on it and boots it up and runs it.
Okay.
So, really simple to use, and from Visual Studio, it's just literally a one-click deploy to get it up to this cloud service.
So those 3 Azure cloud services, are they the same instance, or are they kind of 3 separate instances, so to speak?
Yeah, they're different instances. So again, we've got the Umbraco backend is on its own service, own cloud service. The API is on its own cloud service, and the website is. And the reason for doing that was scalability. So this API, if you think about all this data that's going to be coming back from the games, especially once this kind of takes traction in the US, and you've got a lot of data being thrown at that, and you need to scale it, you can just scale that one service, and it's not going to impact on your backend admin. And if you do a big kind of republish in Umbraco, it's not going to slow down the API and all this kind of stuff. So it totally made sense to just separate them out. Okay.
Yeah. So the 2 in the top left-hand corner is quite interesting. Message queue and the thumbnail generator.
Yeah. So this is a bit I mentioned. So every time that we upload a PDF file, then we're using this Azure Webjob and Azure message queue. And I'll show you a bit of a quick demo of how that works now. It's a really useful technology if you want to do sort of offline processing of stuff that's really processor heavy and that kind of thing. So if I just...
Yeah, maybe not everyone's familiar what a web job is. I'm I'm personally aware of it because I've used it a couple of times, but maybe you can just quickly kind of give a brief overview kind of what a web job is.
Sure. So, I mean, the way I see it, it's kind of like a scheduled task, really, but it's just so much easier, so much more simple to build and to deploy. So it's a console application in reality.
Yep.
You put the console application as a web job, which is SDK, and then you can publish your web job to Azure, and you can host them on the free web apps. So with any Azure subscription, you've got up to 10 free web apps that you can run, which used to be called websites, but now they're called web apps. And it's a really, really nice and easy way of just doing some offline processing.
Yeah. So like your example makes perfect sense. Processing a PDF, abstracting the first page, generating an image, and then storing that back. You wouldn't want to do that in a normal HTTP kind of network request and wait for your kind of workload to kind of do that, generate it, and then come back. This is something that can be kind of triggered, go off and do it, and then come back when you're done.
Exactly. So yeah, we didn't want anything to get in the way of, especially if you think you bulk upload, say like 10 or 50 PDFs.
Yeah, that would really slow down.
So, and the good thing about web jobs is you can have them so they're continuously running, but they're triggered by message queues. So you put data into a message queue and it triggers your web job. And that data is a string, and it can be a JSON serialized string. So you add a piece of message. So you add a piece of data to a message queue, your web job is automatically triggered. If your message in the message queue is an object, so let me. So if I go back into our SE application, this is our, at the bottom, probably in about 10 minutes time you'll see it. There's this thumbnail generator project down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Can you see that? So you can see the...
Yeah, okay, so there's a process queue message function, and you've got a trigger where the message is going to be put in.
Yeah. So this message queue data object is just a basic object that has node ID and the file URL.
Okay, yeah.
So when you add a message to the message queue, you add it in you serialize this object, put it into the message queue as a string.
Yep.
And then when this is kicked off, when this web job is kicked off, this process queue method picks up that piece of data, deserializes it back into the object, and then does what it needs to do with it.
Yeah.
So it's a really nice way of triggering it, really nice way of just giving it a set of parameters. Bring those parameters back into the object that you want to use, and then do whatever you need to do with it.
So I presume, if, like you said, you got a bulk, I don't know, 20, 50 done at once, I presume 20, 50 get put into the queue, and this function just gets run one by one and just goes through the queue until it empties the queue out. Yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. And there's a couple of really good things with web jobs. First is you can configure your web job to pick up more than one message at a time. So you can have up to 16, I guess within your one web job, you can have up to 16 processes running at once. So you can get really good scale on it. And you can also deploy your web job to more than one of the Azure web apps at any given time. So you could have 10 web apps all in one job. You can have 60 messages. So you've got 160, you can process 160 messages from the message queue in parallel. So you've got really meaty kind of. So I don't know if you know, do you know guy Troy Hunt?
Yes, yep, Troy Hunt.
Have I been pawned, however you pronounce it.
Yep.
So on that website, when he gets a big dump of data, 10 million records have just been published. He'll put it all into Azure message, and he'll set that come through and pick all that up and process it, and he just scales all them out. There's a lorry reversing outside.
No worries.
The voltage that lorries never get under, so happens like once an hour or something. So yeah, it's a really good thing and just really simple to deploy. To do this web job is click publish as web job, and then it will take you, check all your check all your destination URL, that kind of stuff, and then just publish it. And
brilliant.
I'll show you one of the other really cool things about the web jobs is you can control them through Visual Studio. So if you're using, you can view your Azure through here. This is a web job that I've got. You can web job. If you view the dashboard, it gives you a real time what that web job is doing. So if I show you this,
2 seconds. We're playing catch up. Is it by any chance the web job Azure kind of portal thing?
Yeah.
I know what you mean. However, I'm not sure what everyone else does. Let's hopefully wait for screen share to play catch up. So whilst your kind of screen share is catching up, in regards to the API, how are you kind of doing the logic or the relational kind of stuff in terms of how these kids are kind of learning and what they're learning, and are you trying to track, I suppose, learning patterns, so to speak? Like you said earlier, you were saying that certain children with certain forms of dyslexia may struggle. Do they kind of map lots of data in terms of, okay, all these types of children with this maybe form of dyslexia are struggling with this set of tasks? Is there kind of any kind of that type of learning going on, so to speak, with the data?
It's at that level. So the way that the lessons and assessments are structured on the site, they within them they test for that kind of difficulty. Where certain lessons are structured, we'll say, okay, this lesson is you've got this type of learning. Whether you're this type of learner or this type of learner. So the output of those lessons will say, this child learns best in this way.
Right.
Or these types of words, because there's so many intricacies to language that you don't realize until I started working on this project. You can't take it for granted if you don't suffer. There's so many nuances of learning that affect different people.
Yep.
So we're not doing any kind of big data crunching on that, but within the application, so there's a set of tests that you take, and on the outcome of those tests, it says you now need to do this lesson, and this lesson. So it guides people to the best way for them to learn.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, we finally managed to play catch up, it seems. We're now at the Azure WebJob portal management studio thing.
Yep, cool. So this is all out of the box. This is a really good feature of WebJobs, is that when you build a web job, Azure just creates this dashboard for you. The only thing you need to do is set up the connection string in your project, which I always forget, but then remember afterwards. So this web job shows, so you can see that there's been 6 of this web job. So this is just a demo web job that I set for the Umbraco Bristol meetup. And you can go into each time that this web has run, and you can see what happened. So this worked. You can see the date and time it ran, how long it took to run, and then this message was the message that was passed into it.
Okay. Yeah.
And then all the web job, this web job demo, all it does is just log out the message that's been passed into it. So
okay.
Really
so kind of like a console.log in the console application.
Yeah, exactly. The really good thing with this dashboard is if this one failed, then you can replay it. So click the replay button, and then this allows you to resubmit this message back. So that has now been queued, and then go back to the dashboard, and you can see when it's been run again and see what the output of it was.
Okay.
And that's really useful. I'm switching back to Visual Studio now, so let me know if you at some point. There's one of the things that you can remotely there.
What was that? Sorry, Maff?
So on the really good part, remotely attach your Visual Studio to the web job and debug it.
Oh, okay. So when it got that a message in the queue, you could debug it, step through, see how it's processing it, and figure out any issues.
Exactly. So if you're having errors in whether it's insecure or whether it's your code, probably the code, usually in my case anyway. So with this, if you start the web job, it's attached if it's not started. Can you see this attached?
No, unfortunately not, which is a shame.
Okay. So if in the Azure Server Explorer in Visual Studio, you can
right. Yep, we're now finally caught up. Okay, so yeah, we can right click in the Solution Explorer, browse to our site, find the web job, and then attach the debugger.
And that will attempt to attach your local Visual Studio code to the remote web job. Sweet. So that's invaluable when you're trying to set something up and debug why it's not working. So.
Yeah, no, that is a must know. But yeah, I can imagine web jobs being useful for kind of many kind of long processing tasks. One in itself would be similar to kind of what you've probably done, but in terms of I don't know, someone's client is a photographer, for example, and they've just dumped the raw image from their, I don't know, 20 megapixel SLR camera, for example, and haven't optimized it, haven't for the web, and kind of just shoved it up. That would be good to kind of put it through some kind of compression stuff or something like that, using a web job that could just squish it, so to speak, and then put it back.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's so many uses of these. I think like say,
I'm sorry, Maff. I didn't get the end of that at all, I'm afraid. We're really kind of cutting out. Before we try and wrap up, which is a shame, because I was keen to hear more from you. We'll try and take some questions before the internet dies between us. Ben McKean asks, when you said you used a separate database for this kind of other data, is that as tables in an Umbraco database or a totally separate database?
Yeah, it's a totally separate database. We started off initially by just setting up a separate schema and putting our custom data in. We quickly found, mainly for ease of doing, we quickly to trash our schema and rebuild it again, or do some kind of big sort of manipulation to the data. We didn't want to risk losing Umbraco data, and it was a bit of a pain moving environment. So we just, ease of development more than anything, we just decided to have separate databases. So we just, split them out into each table within our custom data is a reference to the node ID.
Okay.
But there's foreign key or anything like that. We can or we didn't think that we could keep the referential integrity between our data and the Umbraco. You can delete stuff from Umbraco and can change it. We didn't want that to affect our data, but we didn't want to lose that relationship either. So it just made sense from deployment perspective, from development perspective, and we didn't need that couple between it as well.
Okay, no, awesome. James South, excuse me, James South asks, it's kind of probably a bit of a plug. Have you guys seen the new Azure Storage provider Dirk and himself, James, has been working on recently? I presume there's a newer version. A newer version that's floating around.
Yes, but I haven't had a look. And it's something that, I mean, this one works, so I don't really can change it. But the next project where I need Azure Storage, and I would have a look at that one anyway.
Awesome. Cool. I think we're going to wrap up. Unfortunately, I think the internet gremlins are plaguing us this afternoon. However, it's been great talking to you, Maff, and hopefully I will see you maybe at the UK Festival later in the year.
Yeah, sounds good.
Excellent. No worries, Maff. Catch you later. Thanks. Bye. Bye.